Well, the guys who lose trillions blasting a company that makes billions. The Senate scolding J.P. Morgan for its $6 billion trading loss last year. The same Senate that hasn't passed a budget in almost 4 years, but finally got around to doing it this year. The same Congress, by the way, that keeps digging us into a deeper ditch. To Lizzie McDonald, Ron Meyer, Julian Epstein, the craziness of all of this. You know, Liz, I just find, I mean, someone has to play a role of police and looking at what happens. I just find that it's an odd role for anyone in Congress to be in, judging the fiscal propriety of any entity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it does take a special kind of chutzpah when you see what's going on with the Senate finger-wagging J.P. Morgan Chase. This is a bank that didn't need bailouts. I'm not saying the whale loss was a great thing. It was terrible for investors. Lack of internal controls. There's lack of internal controls, of course, at the government level, in the government that has no fiscal responsibility whatsoever. The investors got hurt. What's going on here? Taxpayers got hurt. The overarching theme is they should be treating our money like it's their own money when they go to spend it in Washington, D.C., just as J.P. Morgan Chase should be treating it as if there was their own investor money. And, you know, those guys had to pay dearly. They did claw back compensation at J.P. Morgan Chase. The people were fired. But I'll tell you something, for the Senate to be finger-wagging like this, you got to think, wait a minute.
You know, I thought of the $6 billion, Ron, and I thought, well, that's about what we rack up in debt over a couple of days, right?
Right. Well, I think it's funny. I think that the Senate lecturing businesses is kind of like Willie Nelson lecturing drug addicts and saying that, you know, you should probably have that.
I don't understand it.
You should
Willie
probably
Nelson
abstain.
Okay,
Or Snoop Dogg. It's like Snoop Dogg telling drug users they should abstain, right? So the people who have this huge problem where they're spending $1 trillion more every year than they're taking in, and leave everything, by the way, to our generation, they're telling everyone else, well, you guys need to have better fiscal, fiscal responsibility. I mean, it's insane. The fact of the matter is that the interest payments alone are going to bankrupt us in the next 10 years. We pay about $250 billion.
But you're not saying someone shouldn't look at companies that have errant trades that boomerang, right?
Well, I think that their stockholders are going to look at them and probably not have stock in their company anymore, right?
All right, but if I think the argument for it, just hearing them out, is that they want to avoid something that could lead to another meltdown. You're saying that they're not the folks to do it.
Well, no, I mean, I think that when Congress helped get us there in the first place by actually pumping up the market by doing Fannie and Freddie and pushing all this liquidity into the housing sector, and then afterwards saying, well, you guys were terrible for taking our money and taking our direction to do this. I mean, I think it's pretty much hypocritical.
Okay, understood. Julian, what do you think of all this?
I think it's nonsense. I think the oversight is part of the constitutional obligation to ensure that the laws that they pass are working, to ensure the regulatory system is working. In the case of the whale trading fiasco, you had a situation where the very integrity of the markets are at stake. You have, according to the Senate report, J.P. Morgan lying to investors about losses, lying to investors about risk, lying about capital requirements, lying about the measures that they need to use.
I could apply that, Julian, to Congress itself.
No,
lying
lying
about fiscal propriety, lying about commitments to the American people, right?
No, it's absolutely wrong. This is about transparency and integrity in the market to give the investors the confidence they need.
Fair enough,
to
Julian, but
invest into
the people
market.
who are talking about transparency.
That's a very different situation.
Let me finish my point. I think you're right, but they're hardly in a position to judge about anything regarding proper financial roles.
Neil,
right?
This is really confusing apples and oranges. What Congress is doing, everybody bemoans the political gridlock, but what Congress is doing with respect to the budget is very transparent to everybody.
No, wait a second. It doesn't matter. You know what? Transparency doesn't matter. We have the worst economic. Hang on, let me finish. We have the worst economic recovery since FDR, and we have spent $16 trillion. Listen, the attitude is from Jamie Dimon was he said this is a tempest in a teapot. That was the wrong stance to take. But it's the same stance you see in Washington D.C. that deficits don't matter when it's tax dollars.
That's ridiculous.
Julian, explain. Julian, just explain your point. Explain your point.
It's a ridiculous argument. What you see in Washington is political gridlock, not the fact that numbers and facts are being hid from the public. It's that people can't agree on the philosophical approach. People can't agree on whether or not you take a big slice out of the deficit when you're at 1% growth. People can't agree, and the Republican Party can't agree amongst itself about what to do about entitlements. People can't agree on what level taxes ought to be at. These are fundamental disagreements that are fought out in elections.
Well, but you can't ignore math, though.
Part of the political process.
Let's be really clear about that.
This is totally different. Wait, this is totally different from the blue smoke and mirror games that are being played by investors that like J.P. Morgan, and that other investors don't know about.
Well,
These
the only
are
thing I will
apples and
say,
oranges
Julian,
you're
the only
talking
thing I
about.
will say, and I'll Ron pick up on this point, the difference was that the company quickly seized and acknowledged the mistakes, owned up to the mistakes, punished representatives at the company for the mistakes, and were held accountable by shareholders for those mistakes. And the shareholders,
Senate report
ultimately the
takes issue
owners
with
of
a
the
lot of those.
company, came back and placed their confidence in the way the company handled it. But go ahead.
Well, Neil, I think you're exactly right. What Congress is doing is really ignoring math, because we have interest payments we have to pay every year, just like everyone has to pay their minimum credit card bill every year, just like you have to pay the interest on your mortgage. We have a mortgage, we have an interest payment we have to pay. It's $250 billion a year right now. In 10 years, we're looking at nearly $1 trillion a year just for interest payments. $1 trillion. Where are we going to get that $750 billion? We're going to either have to dramatically cut services in the government and national security that we actually probably vitally need.
But you're
or we're
not
gonna have to
saying
raise
the
taxes.
government can't have its cake and eat it too, or can't do two things at once, right?
No, what I'm
I
saying-
mean, now, if one of its jobs is oversight of fiscal propriety, even though it might ignore its own, but if there's something that was bad here, they should police.
Listen, I think that they should take more time, and instead of spending this time lecturing businessmen, they should actually take time and write a budget that actually balances. We have to have a balanced budget. This whole thing that Obama and the Democrats
So
are
it
forwarding.
just the what appears to be the hypocrisy that bothers you, Lizzie.
Yeah, it's the again, accountability issues. We pointed out, listen, I'm not saying J.P. Morgan Chase was totally in the clear or in the right here, but investors paid the price there. Executives there
One
paid the
committee
price.
member, I think, said we dodged a very big bullet here. We came close to something that could have been very bad.
Yes, we could have. Yes, that's absolutely right. And the big banks do get a big taxpayer paid for a subsidy. I get it.
So you agree
But-
with Julian, who
but-
says that it
but
was
I'm
worth and worthwhile for them to look at this.
Yeah, but it's worthwhile for them
So Julian
to
is
look
right
at
and you were wrong.
No. I'm saying no. I don't agree with Julian. I'm saying that Congress needs to look to its own house
All
too.
right, Julian, final thought.
Well, I think it is ridiculous to compare these two issues. No one seriously suggests that Congress should not be engaged in oversight in the financial markets, particularly when you see the kind of lying and
So
chicanery
where
that
does
went
the
into the rail
oversight
trading deal.
come in? And why
Can I
is it
finish
not?
my point?
Hang on, let me finish my
You know,
point.
we can
Why
have a
is
more
it not
intelligent
ridiculous
conversation
to
if you
say-
stop talking
Finish
over
your
me.
point, Julian, and then I'm going to let you finish that point.
Okay,
as well.
I mean, I get a third of the time, and your other two guests take two-thirds.
No,
and
you don't,
expect us to have
Julian.
an
I don't
intelligent
need the
conversation.
attitude. Just tell me your point.
So look, the point here is that no serious person suggests that Congress should not conduct oversight when you have this kind of lying going on to investors that went on in the whale trading. The issue about debt and deficit, we all agree that Congress ought to fix that. We all also agree that Congress ought to get to 4 or 5% economic growth, policies that will get 4 or 5% economic growth. But let's just take I assume that your two other guests are conservatives. I mean, the conservatives and Republicans in particular have not put forward a balanced budget. The Ryan budget is not balanced. Right now,
Well, no,
we are
whoa, whoa,
spending at
cut
about.
cap and
Right
balance,
now, we
balance
are
is
spending
fine.
at
Let me
about.
just talk here
Right
for a
now,
second.
we have taxes
All right,
at about 16% of
filibuster this all you
GDP.
want. Julian,
We
you
have-
can,
we
you,
have
Julian, you can
taxes at about
filibuster
16
this all you want. It is not. It is utterly ridiculous and impenetrably idiotic to ignore what is going on in Washington. By the way, I'm a Democrat, and I don't like what I see because you know why? The IRS is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The tax collector is getting bigger and bigger. The more government spending goes on, and it's hitting your wallet, and it's going to hit the middle class
Yeah, but I
taxpayers'
think the
wallets big time.
self-righteous rhetoric takes us nowhere. I think all you're
At
doing
some
is just
point,
giving us a
you're
lot of
like following a
self-righteous
gnat in a
rhetoric.
hurricane.
What you're-
It's not rhetoric. We're
All right,
talking
the
about
reality
reality.
here-
Okay, that'll do it here. That'll do it here. Have a happy St. Patrick's Day. When we come back.